We've selected a mixture of different kinds of Lionel trains, and we're going to show you what to be careful of and what to pay attention to with each one. We have a cast locomotive, we've got plastic-bodied cars, and we have some aluminum pieces in here too. Each needs to be treated a little bit differently. This good little old 2026 has got a few problems. He's missing a jewel and a headlight lens. We'll take care of that. And if you can see, there's a little bit of corroded paint. We can't do much about the corroded paint without destroying its value, but we can clean up some paint chips. Let me show you a few of them. The running board above the steam chest, you can see these little nicks all the way along there, and you see the two straps holding the air tank. There's some paint nicks off of there. And in fact, anywhere on the locomotive that's been handled, such as around the cab, you can see all of these little spots where paint has been chipped off. Well, all of that can be touched up without hurting and, in fact, enhancing the value of the locomotive. The most important thing to know when you're cleaning anything made by Lionel is what is it made out of. This 2420 caboose is made out of 3 different materials. It is a spun aluminum light, and then the toolboxes and the shack part of the caboose are made out of injection molded plastic. The frame is made out of a cast metal, and each of these materials requires a different kind of cleaning solution to take care of it. On the trailing truck of this steam locomotive, we see a clear example of grease buildup, and this is the kind of grease buildup that can cause derailments. Notice the wheel on the front is nice and crisp on the edge. Notice the wheel on the back, that there's already a filler happening where this grease buildup is between the flange and the wheel. I've picked a little bit of it right here with a knife to show you how much of that is not metal. That's actual grease that's built up and becomes very hard on the wheel. This kind of a problem on the wheel can cause derailments, and you may never know where it came from. These are the cleaning materials that I use. It's not to say that they're the only ones that work. I use this Palmolive dish detergent because I found that it doesn't cause any damage to painted products. The 409 is good as long as you use it sparingly. I'll show you how to do that. The brush in the middle is an old shaving brush. I like that because its bristles are extremely soft. Then just below that to the right there is a 1-inch paintbrush. Bristles are a little bit stiffer. You can do a lot of dry brushing with that. And then a toothbrush with bristles just a little bit stiffer than that. There's also a round file, an X-Acto knife to do any chipping that you need to get underneath some very strong grease, and I've got a bottle of Poly-S engine black with a small paintbrush to do some touch-ups. It's easy to clean a Lionel plastic boxcar, but the tough thing is to clean it without hurting its value at all. What we're going to do here is show you how to clean this without hurting and in fact adding to the value of the car. The first thing that you need to do is remove the plastic body from the frame. It's usually accomplished by removing one screw, separating the floor until you have 2 pieces. The first step in cleaning these cars is to give them an overall light cleaning to see how much more we need to do. Remember, you don't want to do any more than is absolutely necessary because the paint may be loose and easy to chip off. Now, I've prepared a warm water solution with a few drops of Palmolive dish detergent in it, and we're just going to give the car an overall light cleaning with an extremely soft brush. Let's see how this comes out. Don't rub hard, especially over the graphics. And I can see that the graphics are still not clean, and there's some dirt lodged in here fairly well that's going to take some more cleaning later. So let's rinse this off and see what it looks like. Now let's take a close look at this. Now it's obvious we've dislodged a lot of the dust, but look on this door. See the, looks like the fingerprints are still there, and it looks like there's some dirt still in the lettering on the New Haven here. Now to get these grease fingerprints off the door, we need to use something like this 409. Now you may be tempted to spray the whole car with that. You do not want to do that. You don't want to get any 409 on any part of the lettering because that's a little too delicate for this petroleum-based product. What you want to do is get something like the toothbrush and just spray the 409 right on the brush like this. Let's start working the 409 on this door and see if we can get that grease off. Now that came right off. You see that? I can tell already that that's got it much cleaner. Now let's rinse it off. Remember, Make sure your water is just lukewarm, not too hot and not cold. Okay, now that's much better. It's completely clean in there now. Now let's go up here and get the walkboard on top, but get the 409 out of your brush first because we want to just use the regular soap on there. The reason is we don't want to stain with the 409 this flat black paint. But with just the nice soft detergent, we'll get all of the caked in dust out of there, then go along the ribs. Let's get the end boards too. Be sure and get the little brake wheel. Okay. Now, the last thing we're going to do is just blot the car dry on a nice, soft towel, like this. The reason we want to blot it dry is we don't want to rub hard on any part of the paint. Remember, it is old, and you want to just go as gently as you can. The final step in drying the car is to use an old barber's trick. Get a double length of paper towel. Of course, a barber used a cloth towel. But you fold it several times like this so that only the tips of the towel are going to touch the car, because that's a lot less harsh than the paper towel itself rubbing on the car. When you just use the tips like that, it sort of reaches down in all the little cracks and crevices and soaks out any water which may be retained. Pay particular attention to the door runners because they hold water. The end ribs here. Like that. And inside the car, you don't have to be very careful inside the car, but just kind of soak out what's there. And then let the rest of the plastic body air dry. Now on very sensitive cars, like this B&O Sentinel service car, don't use anything but the very softest bristle brush and a very light detergent solution. Don't even use a heavy detergent solution. And above all, don't use any 409 or other high-strength cleaner. When you're doing this car with the brush, just do it gently. Be very careful because it's so easy to knock these letters out of that heat sink recess that they're in the plastic. When you rinse it, be sure that you use lukewarm water. Don't use cold or hot water. You don't want the plastic to expand or contract, causing some sort of a surface problem in the paint. When you dry it, use the folded towel like this and blot it like that only. Don't blot it on a hard cloth towel. Just do it like this. The objective is for you to use as little contact with the surface as you can to get the job done. The method I'm about to show you on cleaning the wheels applies only to metal wheels and metal side frames. If you have some post-war or MPC cars that have plastic side frames, you shouldn't really do it this way. But on a post-war car such as this one, you do need a wire wheel on a grinder or a wire wheel on a Dremel tool. But very simply, all you need to do is put a drop of oil at the wheel and axle point like this. Okay, we're ready to start. The objective here is for the tips of the wires to just touch the wheel. If you hold them on there, they'll do that, and they'll break up all of that hard packed grease and get it out of the wheel. There, look at that. Now you may notice that some oil has worked its way out of the axle and onto the face of the wheel. That's good, we want that. I'll show you why. If you have a Dremel tool, you need to equip it with the bristle brush right here. And just give the faces of those wheels a light buffing. Well, the wheels look good, but look at all the dirt in the side frames. Let's get that out. To clean those side frames, go back and get your toothbrush that you were cleaning using soap and water, get it thoroughly dried out, and then put a drop of oil on the tip of the toothbrush, like that. And then just scrub the side frames. Now, why do we use oil instead of water? Well, the side frames oftentimes have a little bit of corrosion on them that you can't clean off. But when you get the oil on there, it'll color the corrosion the same color as the side frame, and it will look like a brand new wheel set. Look at that. Doesn't that look nice? Now compare that one with this one that we haven't done yet. And then the last thing we need to do is the tops of the couplers. Now, it might not seem like much, but when you get this all put together, the tops of the couplers will be the only dirty thing on the car if you don't do this. Now, this car looks just as good as it did when it was brand new in 1954. And by cleaning it carefully the way we did, we didn't detract from the value of the car. In fact, we may have added to it. Now, with the cast metal frame, we can be a little bit more aggressive because the paint sticks better to the cast metal frame. So for that, we can just cover the whole thing in 409 and use our toothbrush, especially on floorboards like this. Oh, see that? It just comes right out of there. Now for this aluminum light, since it's a solid aluminum piece, in order to clean it up, we need to get a wire wheel on a Dremel tool and very carefully buff the dirt out of the aluminum like this. Be careful when you get around the bulb. Just get in like this. There. That looks so much better than before. The locomotive casting is going to be the one that's going to be the dirtiest of all the train. The reason is there were more hands on this over the years than in any other car, and there'll be hand oil and dust combined and caked all over it. In order to get that clean, we're going to use the 409 all over the body of the locomotive, and we're going to use the toothbrush on everything except the letters on the cab. Now let's work into all the crevices and grooves with the toothbrush, especially around the smokestack where all that oil and smoke was. Don't get the stiff bristle toothbrush on the lettering or on the cab numbers on the back of the locomotive. But on the front here, clean that boiler front up real good. Now, let's get that rinsed off. Okay, now let's use the soap and water solution. To make sure we get all the 409 out of there. And now we can hit those cab numbers a little bit better. Now let's rinse that off. Let's take a look at what we have. Well, we can see that there's quite a few nicks and things on there, but look how much better that cab number looks. The white really stands out on that much more than before. Now we're going to set this aside to dry. The tender body is plastic, so we're going to have to do that a little bit differently. We don't want to use any 409 on that because we're a little worried about how well the white lettering is sticking to the plastic. So we're going to go back to our soap and water, and we're going to lightly go over the lettering on the sides, like that. Now let's go to our toothbrush and scrub the coal pile really good. Now let's rinse him off. The last thing we need to do is just put some flat black touch-up paint anywhere we see the paint chipped on this engine and on the tender. And then, when that dries and blends in, that too should look as good as the day it was purchased. Well, we've got a couple of parts from the hobby shop. We've got a new headlamp lens and a jewel and a little bit of super glue. We sure made the front of this locomotive look a lot better. It takes a little bit more time to do it this way, but if you touch up every single little paint speck that's missing on the locomotive starts to look just as good as the day it was purchased. It sure looks a lot better than when we started, doesn't it? Well, this sort of restoration on these locomotives doesn't hurt their value one bit, and it sure makes them look a lot better.